there, weavers. Welcome back. Grace here with Tangled Webs Weaving. And I did a video a little bit ago that showed you winding 2 threads at a time for my Moroccan Blue Tile Napkins. So I thought it would be a good idea to post another video related to that. It's the actual getting on the loom and weaving off the first item. Now, I'm thinking that this might be helpful to you because the first item of anything that you do has choices that need to be made and problems that you need to solve along the way. And I am nothing but a problem solver. So I wanted to show you the process of how I do that and give you some tips along the way to solve your weaving problems. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, you can see that I have the warp wound onto the loom now, and I am just threading my heddles. So this is a fairly straightforward pattern, so I don't need to use my treadle tracker, or my threading tracker, I should say. It's just a straight draw and a point draw. So I just need to know when to change between those. And it's fairly straightforward because where the color changes from the blue-white to all white is where my threading changes from a straight draw to a point draw, and then back again. So I'm just using my paper threading diagram to make sure that I keep on track of knowing which color goes in the odd shafts and which go in the even shafts, because it changes when I change from the straight draw to the point draw. So when I'm threading, especially this is a 10-2 cotton. So when I'm threading this, I find it's just easier to thread it with my fingers. And so I pull out the 8 heddles that I need, and you could do 4 if you like, if that's more convenient for you. I just find that doing 8 at a time it makes it so that I don't accidentally double up on threading a shaft. So if I did like 8 through 5 and then 4 through 1, it's possible I could overlap and get 5 through 1 by accident. So if I pull out my 8 heddles and I thread those all, and I am certain to make sure that the white threads are on, in this case, they should be on the even shafts. So I just kind of make sure that if I'm threading a white thread, it's on an even shaft, and if I'm threading a blue thread, it's on an odd shaft. So I'm almost done with this threading, and then we can tie it on and start weaving. Which this is a fun weave because it's so different looking. I love color and weave projects because they just have such interesting patterning. So when I'm threading this by hand, I reach through and I've threaded this 2 at a time. So I grab the group that's next. I separate them into which one I want. So I've got a blue and a white that are in the same cross. And I'm going to grab the white because that's what I need next. And let me do that again. I did that kind of fast. So I grab it and I pull it through to the right because I'm right-handed. And I pull it through to the front and then I just make a little loop there. And then I take that loop and I can push that through the heddle eye very easily. So let's do that again. I grab the blue one and I take it and bring it to the right, pull it out, create a loop. And I kind of do that all in one motion. And then I push it off to the side and pull that loop out. So if I was using a threading hook, I would have to separate those threads so that I could get my threading hook in there. And so I find with the finer threads, it's much easier just to thread it by hand. So you can see I started slaying the reed here, and the purple or the blue tape is the edge of my weaving width, so that's how I mark it. And this is threaded 28 ends per inch in a 12 dent reed, so I'm slaying it 3-2-2. So, and then I'm tying it off in 1 inch bouts. So we'll just grab the next set, and I've got 3. Okay, so I think that this will give you a better view. So we're gonna pull this up. We're gonna take 3, 2, and 2. I'm gonna make sure that they are not crossed in between there. And then I'm going to pull them through the reed. And we'll do that again. 3, 2, 2. There. Now we are ready to tie onto the front apron rod. Okay, so the next step in our warping process is to tie the warp onto the apron rod, or the apron rod. And I like to lash on because I find I get better tension and it's faster. So I'm going to put a couple dowels here on my apron rod to just hold it up until I get my first few bouts lashed on. And I need to roll my warp back a couple. Uh-oh, and I just lost my oh, for pity's sake. All right. So I take a piece of, or a bobbin of a heavy cotton that is, I think this is mercerized, but it's probably, it's heavier than 8-2, might be like 6-2, and it's just scrap yarn that I have a cone that I inherited somewhere along the line, and I need to move that even farther back. All right, this is my floating selvage, so it's not weighted yet. So I'm just gonna kind of let it hang there as it is. All right, so I want some space in between my apron rod and the knot. So I've tied a knot in each of my bouts, and I've tied them in 1/2-inch increments. And now I'm going to tie my lashing string onto my apron rod. Maybe. All right, there we go. And I'm going to open a plain weave shed, or if your pattern doesn't allow a plain weave shed, just open as close to a plain weave shed as you can get. That will separate half my threads to the top, half to the bottom, and then I'm going to pass this shuttle through there, and I'm going to scoot that over and kind of pull it tight. Now I'm going to try to get all of my knots below where it passes through. So we pull the next one, get the top on the bottom, and I always want to go over my apron rod, come back under, and then pass from right to left. If you're left-handed, you might do it differently. So now it's easier to keep the tension on them. And when I tied these knots, I did the same thing. I opened my plain weave shed, kind of separated the upper and the lower to decrease any problems that I would have in putting this through the lashing cord through the middle. And then I tied my knots, and I tied them all about the same distance. They're slightly different, but if they're within 1 inch of each other, I'm happy. Now also with this particular pattern, these outside sections are going to have all of the odd threads on the top and all the even threads on the bottom. So all the blue threads are on the top, all the white threads are on the bottom. And when I was tying the knots, I made sure that that was the case, because otherwise it means I have a misthreaded petal. Now at this point I have a white stripe in here, and then the pattern shifts to having all the white on the even or odd shafts and all the blue on the odd shafts, or other way around. Yeah, all of the white is on the odd shafts, all the blues on the even shafts in the middle. On the side, it's just the opposite. So now I want to look and make sure that I don't have any blue threads that are coming up from the bottom. Doing this also keeps you from, or checks for crossed threads behind the reed. So if I raise this shed and I have a thread that won't either go to the top or the bottom, then that means I've got a crossed thread behind the reed. And when I did this, I did have a couple of those, so I had to fix them. But better to fix them now before I'm lashing on than to have to fix them when I start weaving. And I didn't open any other sheds to check for it. I probably should have, but we'll see how I did. Before I start weaving, I will open all my sheds and check for cross threads. It's not as easy to fix once I've lashed on, but they're easier to see. And that didn't get tied. Okay. So we will stop here. So this isn't a good example. So I separate the two and then I let the shed close when I go to tie my knot. And that just keeps all the threads even. And then I can open it and pass that back through. So you can see I've gotten some of these are a little bit longer than others, but it's fine. So I would like to give a shout out to one of my supporters, Diane, who recently bought me some skeins of yarn on Ko-Fi. Or I guess it's pronounced Ko-Fi since it's supposed to be for coffee, but I have mine set up for skeins of yarn. So thank you, Diane, for supporting me, both by watching my channel and supporting me financially. It just means that is some more yarn that I can buy. And that's really why I do this. I'm not trying to support my family doing this. I work a full-time job, or mostly full-time. But this is my hobby, and your financial support lets me continue that hobby and lets me continue to bring more content to YouTube. So thank you. All right, so now I've got them all lashed, and I'm going to take my lashing yarn around the end here several times, and that will provide some tension and it won't slip, and then I'm going to just cut that off. Now, the tension is going to be higher over here than over here because of the tension stays higher on the side that you end on. But what I'm going to do is I am going to let the tension off, and then I'm going to re-tension it. So I'm going to let the back tension off, and then I'm going to crank the front tension a little bit. I'm going to kind of push this all down, and what this does is it allows these cords to kind of move a little bit and even the tension out. And I'm going to focus mostly on this side because this side is already loose. So we're just going to kind of move these around, and then I'm going to tension it more, and I'm going to remove these support sticks. We don't need those anymore. And it's getting better. It's still looser over here, so I'm going to pull up on the lashing cords and work that tension, that looseness across. I'm not pulling super tight, just trying to get them all equal. And you can see that a lot of that inconsistent tension is being taken up because my lashing cord is getting longer. And then I'm going to kind of wrap it around. My son is in there playing video games, so he evidently got the bad guy. He did it. Okay, so just pull that tight. There we go. And then I'm going to feel the tension, and it is pretty darn close to perfect. So now I wrap it around, but I grab a loop and I pull my yarn through that loop and then go back against the loop. And I'm going to do that a couple times, and that will provide even more tension and it will stay there. All right, so yep, that is pretty good. So now we can go ahead and set up to start the weaving. Okay, so we are set up here to weave, and the first thing I'm going to do is spread my work. Now I've got my tabby treadle set up, so I'm going to treadle one tabby and then put my waste yarn in, and this is just some I had left over from another project. I mean, I think it's a 3-2 mercerized, and I'm going to get that down about to the bottom of where my warp is. So then I'm going to tabby without beading. I'm going to tabby my next pick, and I'm going to and I did not do something I said I was going to do. So in doing this, I can see there is a thread right here that is not, it's not staying down, it's not going down, it's not going up, it's staying in the middle, which tells me there is a crossed thread right here. So you can see it right here, and if I pull my beater forward, I can see that it's crossed right there. And sure enough. So I'm going to have to fix that before I can go any further. But before I do that, I'm going to run through all of my sheds and see if there are any others. So I'm going to grab some waste yarn here and mark these. And so I'm just going to take some waste yarn and I'm going to mark that. And the best way to do this is to look down your shed and you'll be able to see if any oops. And this one is kind of hanging things up. I think I'm going to move this down here. All right. And sometimes if they stick together, especially before you really get your weft put in, they tend to stick together. right, so that one's fine. 4, that looks okay. 5, that one's good. 6, there's that one still. 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so I just have the one. I say just. It's kind of a pain, and I should have done it before I got it all tensioned, because now I have to undo the tensioning. So let's grab our sleighing hook and figure out which one these are. It's right there. Okay, so I'm going to take the tension off, and I'm going to undo this knot here. Because I need to pull those threads out. Okay. So these two. Okay. And then I'm going to pull them off there. And oh, I see. Yes, that didn't work at all. Okay, so 1, 2. These belong in one. And then these two belong in one. All right, so now we're going to put these in their correct dents, because the threading was fine. It was just the fact that the dents, I had crossed from the heddles, the 2 threads I had crossed over. So let's go ahead and pick up our shed. We'll get those. And then I'm going to try to do this in place. I'm going to pull up a lot of tension there. And I'm going to tie this, and I'm going to try to get it back down about where it was. That might be a little bit lower than it was, but we'll see. So then we're going to kind of push these all down, get them situated. And then I will put tension back on the warp. And I need, use my handle. All right. How'd I do? So we're going to, it feels a little bit tighter over here than over here. I think what I'm going to do is just gently work some tension across. I don't want to pull a lot of tension. But you can see I've got more tension on this side than the other side. So we'll just kind of work that over. feels a little bit better. All right, and then we'll all right, there we go. That was fairly painless. All right, now we can put our spreading yarn in. All right, take 2. We're going to take this tape off of my reed because it's interfering with my floating selvage. All right, I'm going to take this across and we're going to pull it down to about where our fell line will start. We're not going to beat, we're going to chain shed and kind of pull, make sure that these are separated so that we can get our weft through there. And I'm going to leave this at a large angle. Now, typically what I would do is I would throw a third one across, but this you can see is really sticking together. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and beat on an open shed and pull that down part way, change shed to my next plain weave shed, and put in another pick of the waste yarn. And I'm going to leave that hanging out there quite a bit. I'm going to put it at a good angle, pull it down, change sheds. So I've still got it kind of bowing right there. So I'm wondering if there's some tension issues going on there. And so you can see that it's spread the warp fairly well. That's my floating selvage that's a little bit loose. That's fine. And do it again. And as you do this, it will even out the tension and spread your warp. So I don't want to pull this tight like that. I want to leave lots and lots of room for it to move. Okay, and down. So now it's starting to get a pretty straight fell line. And I think one more and we will have it. So you can see I'm not beating those in. I want it to even out. All right, and push that one in, and then we can cut this off. Wonderful, now we can start our weaving. So this is a color and weave project. So I'm going to be using 2 shuttles. I have my white and my blue. And just like when we threaded the heddles, wound the warp and threaded the heddles, we're going to be weaving it exactly the same way. The only difference is I am going to weave more of white only for the hem allowance. So on this side, you'll see that I had 16 threads of white only with no blue. And that is how my first line on the napkin will be, except I want to allow enough to fold a hem over so that when they're hemmed, they just have that line across. So this is a very simple pattern that you weave. We'll put the blue down here for the moment. It's just treadled 1 through 8. And we're going to beat this in at about 27 picks per inch. There is 27 picks. So I'm going to stop and check my beat. And I am exactly 1 inch. So that is the beat that I need to maintain. Okay, so I'm not sure how I did this, but I have a threading error, and it's right here. Now, what kind of baffles me about this is, so it should look like this. So we have 2 blue lines, and actually, I'm sorry, it should look like this. So it should have the 2 white threads with a blue thread in the middle. And we have 2 white threads. So I thought, okay, well, I must have gotten a blue and a white swapped. But when I look at the, oh, and I think I just answered my own question. So when I went and I pull this all apart and I look at my heddles, it's threaded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, with all the odd numbers being white. And then 8 should be a blue, and then it should go back to 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it's a point threading. But my number 8 shaft heddle is empty, and I'm missing a blue thread. I'm like, well, how could I be missing a blue thread? I must have an extra blue thread somewhere over here, which I don't. But sitting here talking to you, I look back at my warp and I see a random blue thread that is not taut. So I believe if I reach through here and sure enough, I don't know what happened to it. It looks like it got tangled up with the other threads and pulled out of the warp, or out of the heddles. So I need to untangle this back here, thread it through the number 8 shaft heddle and through the reed and tie it on here. But I've got all this woven, which I don't want to. I have 2 choices. I can try to needle weave that blue thread in there. I can unweave this and start over. I can just say this is a header and call it good. I can say this is a hem, so it's really not going to be seen. I could cut out this weft and start over, but that is fraught with the potential of cutting your warp, and you don't want to do that if you don't have to. So I think for right now, I'm going to dig this random thread out from behind all my heddles, get it threaded through the heddle, threaded through the reed, and then decide what I'm going to do with it at that point. So I'll be back. Okay, so we are back to where we left off with the error that I have now fixed. So I decided to go ahead and unweave all of this that I had done, and to thread the missing thread through the correct heddle, thread it through the correct dent, and which threw my denting off, so I just re-dented from here over. So now it is correct. So now we're going to introduce the blue in the color and weave patterning. So we're going to throw every other pick will be the dark blue, but we're still going to use the same treadling. So we'll throw this one, and I'm going to throw these from opposite sides, and that will help keep me knowing which one to put on the top and which one to put on the bottom. So there's 1, 2. So I'm going to go 2. So my blue is always going to be my odd shafts. Or Wesley. My son evidently needs help. So so I did not tuck my tail on that. All right, well, I will needle weave that back in later. 6. So my blue is going to be on the top, and my white will be on the bottom. And that should keep everything in a line. 7. And 8. So does that, yes, that's correct. All right, 8. So then we're going to do that again. So you can see the patterning coming in here. So because of, this is a point twill and this is a straight twill, the outside panels are going to look different than the inside panel. And that is kind of the fun thing about these napkins. I threw the wrong. Now, see, I knew that I had thrown the wrong one because I went to do an even treadle and I was throwing the blue shuttle. So I knew that was wrong. So we'll go. And it's a good idea to say at the end of every repeat of 8, you look at the pattern, make sure it looks correct. That way you only have to unweave up to 8 picks. Whenever I finish a repeat, I know that I've got my blue on the left, my white on the right, and if I end up with them crossed over, I know I've done something wrong. Now, that being said, there's 12 repeats of this pattern, and then we're going to switch to a different pattern. We're going to switch from the straight twill to a pointed twill. So we will end up with a different scenario. So let's go. So now we're going to put in 8 picks of white. So we're matching these lines here when we're doing our pattern. And then we will switch to the point draw, or the point treadling, I should say. Now, you can do this one of 2 ways. You can cut the blue and tuck the tail and then weave the white and then start the blue up again, tucking the tail. If I was going to do that, I would split the tail so that it didn't show up and it didn't build up. Or you could just run the blue up the side. I don't really like that idea because it's gonna show as a blue line on the side, but let's see what it looks like. It's only 8 picks, so it might not be too bad. So when we do that, I make a big loop here and I'm going to go under that loop just like as if it was a floating selvage. Okay. And then for the next pick, because I'm doing all white picks now, I'm going to go over that loop like it was a floating selvage. And I need to be sure not to grab that blue shuttle because my muscle memory wants to do that. So you can see that, you can see it, and I think it looks fine. You've got the blue and the white here, and so having a little bit of blue here, and you've got the blue and the white in here, I don't think it's a problem. If it were 16 picks, I might make a different choice, but I think I'm just going to leave it that way. This side doesn't have those picks. You know what? It's twice on each napkin. It's not that much. I am going to unweave this and I am going to cut my blue thread and not weave it up the side. That's just my choice. Not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just what I prefer. This is kind of annoying to have to unweave this, but so this is kind of what the first item on any project is like, is you're making choices and you're solving problems. So you may decide that you don't like it running up the side, or that you do like it running up the side. But that's kind of, and you know, finding the threading error in the middle, or finding a denting error. Those are the problems that you have to look for and solve when you do the first repeat of a project. So if you're weaving a scarf, maybe you decide that you want to weave it up the side, and that's totally fine. Because there are, you know, several color changes, and you don't want to have all those cuts of the colors. And you kind of figure that out in the first repeat. So on a napkin like this, kind of this whole, the whole first napkin is one repeat. All right, so I unwove that last white pick in the blue and white so that I can tuck this tail. So we're going to cut that. I am going to get a needle to split the ply on this. Now, if you are not familiar with how I do this, I will run through it. So when I tuck my tail, I don't want, no, you could, so this is another choice, personal preference. If you wanted to, so this is the last pick. You could take that and you could go over that floating selvage and tuck the tail and beat it in, and it would probably look just fine. I personally am I get a little anal about it, and I like to make it as invisible as possible. And to do that, what you do is you cut your tail longer, a little bit longer than how much you're going to tuck, and then you pull it back through the shed at a point about the point you want to tuck it to. Now you're going to untwist these plies until you can get a needle through there. And sometimes I use a tapestry needle, but this is 10-2, it's pretty fine. So using a little bit pointier needle is easier. So if this was a 2-ply, you separate it into its 2-ply segments. If it was a 4-ply, each of these tails would be 2 plies. So you just split the ply in half. Now you're going to take one of those plies, doesn't matter which one. You're going to put it back through the same shed And I always like to kind of beat it in lightly to make sure everything is spread across. And then I'm going to, keeping that shed open, I'm going to take and bring it around my floating selvage through the same shed, and I bring it 1 or 2 threads past where I left this tail hanging out, and then we'll beat it in lightly. Now, what that does is it creates a 2-ply where you have tucked your tail. And then once you weave a couple more picks, you can cut these tails off, and it is completely invisible. You would not be able to tell that you did it. So let's go ahead and do that. So now we're going to put that last pick in. And then put in our 8 picks of the white. Ahead and carefully, so that you don't get your weft or warp in there, you cut those off and you can't even tell that it was there. What we're going to do now is we're going to switch direction of our twill. So we were going, let's see, I think we're going this way with our twill. So we're going to switch it, and we're going to switch it back this way. Now, we're also going to throw in a point twill into it. So we're going to switch it going back this way, and then at the point, we're going to switch it back, and at the point, back. So we'll have a zigzag, and that will change this pattern from this one, and it will change this pattern from this one. And then these 2 patterns will be the same. This one will be different. So we end up with 6 unique patterns on this napkin, because at the other end, we'll repeat this, and then you'll have something that is cohesive. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to throw a white, and we do that to reverse our color and weave portion also. And because I did that, I am going to start my blue over here on the right. And I'll beat that in. And again, I'm going to split my tail. Now, I didn't do it back here. Well, I forgot to tuck my tail here, but I wouldn't have done it anyways. This is going to be a hem, and so it's going to be hemmed right up to it, and you're really not going to be able to see it. So sometimes these fine threads can get sticky. Okay, so we go through the same shed under our floating selvage. Beat it in a little bit. And then we're going to go back through the same shed, around our selvage, and in. So now we are weaving white on the odd shaft and blue on the even shafts. Does it go under it? Yes. And then we will go back up the treadle. 3. So we will go ahead and cut those off carefully. Got some fuzzies going on there. And now you can see that this has changed from this pattern. And you'll notice that these two patterns are going opposite ways because we threaded them in opposite directions for our twill. So the twill was going this way in this side, and it's going this way in this side. So, and the twill was going both ways in this side. So when we do the point twill over here, it looks similar to this, but it's rotated, and it's rotated opposite directions. And then this is basically a closing of this because we're doing the point twill in a point threading. So we'll continue weaving on. I believe I have, I don't remember how many repeats of the, I think I have 20 repeats of this. So I'm going to be weaving this for a little bit. So when I get down to the end of this repeat, I will show you this line again, and then we'll weave this, and then the next border, and then we'll be done with the first napkin. Okay, weavers, we have our finished, well, they were supposed to be napkins, but there were a couple hiccups along the way. One of them being that when I was threading this, or winding the warp and threading it, and even when I started weaving, I thought that the white thread looked so much larger than the blue thread. And I thought, well, it's probably just because the blue thread is dyed and it's a dark color, so it's going to maybe look smaller. But what I found out when I was sitting at my winding station, my new little handy dandy winding station my husband built me, and I glanced up at my shelf and this is what I saw. So I was like, well, wait a minute. That shouldn't be 10-2 cotton. I used the 10-2 white cotton. That should be 8-2. So I grabbed the cone that I was using, and I always, when I take that cellophane off the cones of the Valley yarn, I tape the label inside the cone. That way I know exactly what it is. So I looked at the inside of the cone that I was using to wind my bobbin, and sure enough, it said 8-2. So I had wound my whole warp with 8-2 white and 10-2 blue. And I had woven a bobbin full of white with white 8-2 with blue 10-2. It didn't look bad. It looked fine. It didn't look like the 10-2 blue and 10-2 white ones that I had done. So I thought, well, I'll just continue on. But the other problem that I was going to face was that my cone of 8-2 cotton, which was 1 pound, had a lot less yardage on it than my 10-2 cotton in white would have been. It's about 1,000 yards less, and I was going to need those 1,000 yards. So fortunately, I had a partial cone of the white on my shelf, so I was able to finish the project. But I only got 8 items out of my 8-yard warp, and I should have gotten 10. So I wasn't doing a very good job of keeping track of my my picks per inch, and I kind of kept track of it the first few times and then knew what the beat should be. Well, evidently I probably lightened up a little bit. It was a little bit harder to get that 8-2 cotton snugged in with the 10-2 cotton, and I ended up, because I was going off of the number of repeats that I was doing, I ended up with towels instead of napkins. So the napkins should have been approximately square. I think that they were supposed to be like 16 wide by 17 long. And after hemming. And what I ended up with is 15 wide, which means that I think probably the 8-2 cotton shrunk a little bit more than the 10-2 would have. And so I ended up with 15 wide. And after hemming, these are about 21 inches long. So it's not bad. They're a smaller size towel than what I normally make, but I think that they will make a nice size towel. You can drape it over your arm like that. A couple of tea towel. Anyways, that just goes to show you need to pay attention when you're doing these things. And if you notice something doesn't look right, it probably isn't. So these will go in my Etsy shop as towels. And because they have the 8-2 cotton, they're a little more heftier than what the napkins would have been. So they'll make great towels. And they still have a really cool pattern. So if you want to take a look at those and purchase any of those, you can do that. You can also buy this pattern on my Etsy shop, or in my Etsy shop. And you can get the draft for it and make your own, and you can do it with the right size yarn and make the right size napkins. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and happy weaving.